everyone. I hope you all are doing well. My name is Abbas Kudrati, and today we will talk about zero trust and the role of unified endpoint management, or the short form it's called as UEM. So let's get started. So first, let me allow me to introduce myself. Uh, yeah, as I said, Abbas Kudrati. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. I've been a CISO for a number of years, and now I work with Microsoft Asia Pacific as a role of a chief cybersecurity advisor. And I'm also a part-time professor with Deakin University and Latrobe University. And during my free time, I am also passionate about writings. So these days, I'm writing number of books. I just finished writing Threat Hunting on the Cloud, and currently I'm working on two more books. One is on the zero trust, and second one is more on the risk management and compliance side of it. So when you get an opportunity, do follow me on LinkedIn or have a look at it on Amazon portal once the books are ready. The first book is getting released very soon. So let's get started in terms of why we need to talk about zero trust and what unified endpoint management can play a role within your zero trust network architecture. So we have seen how global pandemic has put across a lot of opportunities in terms of how organizations are now accelerating specifically their digital transformation projects. And if you have been following Satya Nadella, who is a CEO of Microsoft, he said that uh, 3 years or 2 years of digital transformation have been now shrinked into just couple of years, couple of months. We have seen that kind of progress within just 3 months in that particular time. So one of the main challenges what we are facing today is specifically how our organizations can allow their employee to work remotely and that too more securely, because the traditional network and the security parameter models are now slowly disappearing, and we are now continuously working and evolving with the mix of locations, the mix of various types of device model, working more into remote and a hybrid model. It doesn't matter in terms of where your employees are. What you need to do is allow your employee to access your organization resources with all sort of varieties of tools to making sure that they are productive. What we also see and notice that on top of all these things going around, organizations are now dealing with increasing volume and the sophistication of threats. What we are seeing the ransomware, we are seeing human operated ransomware, the phishing attack, we are seeing issues such as Nobelium, the colonial pipeline, just to name a few. And on top of it, the threat landscape is now continues to evolve, and cyber attacks are on continues to rise. That really challenges us in terms of how we are going to architect our entire network design, or how are we going to allow access to the resources to our employee who are especially working in a hybrid model. So to overcome that, we have to really think through in terms of a new design principle. And the new design principle, we call it as a zero trust network architecture. So if I can give you a short introduction, what zero trust architecture? It's a security framework which now enables us to respond to the specific need of our individuals in this particular new reality, in which we want to consider this approach in a way that there is a continuous validations and authentication and authorizations of all kinds of signals, specifically the two types of signals, which I would call it as an identity signals and the device signals. So we collect these two main areas of signals and analyze it through the risk management or the risk profile or the policy of your individual company. And if the policies are matched, then only you allow your employee or that particular resource to get connected with the organization's data or the network or the application. And to do that, we will follow three key principles. What are those three key principles? So the three key principles we talk about as a part of zero trust, the first one being the explicit verification. We call it trust no one, verify everyone. In this particular case, what does it mean, verify explicitly? It means that we are moving away from an assumption to an explicit verification. We always want to authenticate and authorize based on all the available data point. And the data point could be the device's health, device's location, the applications, and many more. We'll touch upon a little bit briefly as we move towards the next slide. The second principle we talk about is the least privilege access. In this particular case, we want to make sure that we adopt a policy-based access model wherein we will limit the user access based on need to know, need to do basis, or in other words, we call it just in time and just enough access. The third principle we touched upon is an assume breach mindset. Now, this particular principle, we want to make sure that we design our architecture in a way that we always think from an assume breach mindset in a way that we have a layered defensive control. We want to minimize the attack blast surface within our organizations. That way, if first control fails, then we have a second control in place to stop that particular attack, or to mitigate or to stop that kind of a lateral movement within the organizations. So we'll follow these three principles as a part of zero trust: verify explicitly, least privilege, and assume breach. Now, next one. So if I can put it on a page in terms of architecture design, so as you can see it on the center, we have something called security enforcement policy. So this is nothing but a zero trust policy engine. Many products and vendor have that kind of a mechanism. Either you buy it as a box, which comes with a predefined policy, or you use something like Azure AD, which becomes your policy-based engine to analyze on the left-hand side identities and endpoint signals based on the three principles which we talked about. And if those things are matched or policies assigned, accordingly, then you give your employee the resource access to those resources, which is on the right side, which we talked about: data, application, infrastructure, or the network. What can be done. So in case of a zero trust, this particular approach, we want to make sure that we extend throughout the entire digital estate, which includes identity, endpoint, data, application, infrastructures, and network, because that's going to serve as an integrated security philosophy, which will give us an end-to-end strategy. For the sake of this presentation, we will touch upon more on the devices side, or the unified endpoint management side, in terms of how are you going to manage the variety of the devices and endpoints you may have within the company. So to build that particular foundation element of a zero trust, as we talked about identity and endpoint, but definitely it is our objective to make sure that we are securing the identities and we are also securing the endpoints. First one, the identity-based attack, such as the password breach and password spray, phishing emails, they are continuously on rise. And 80% of the breaches are now involving and turning into the loss of user data or because of a stolen password. The second one being the workers which are distributed in a multi-geographical area or working from home in a hybrid model. They are using the variety of devices, which could be an unsecured device where the organizations are trying to put the data, or the employees trying to put the data, which also translate into 60% of the BYO, or being your own device, today are unsecured, and which is a huge concern for the IT department or the CIO or the CISO who are now managing those security of that particular company. So that's where we will focus a little bit on why the devices are a critical factor. Of course, identity becomes the key parameter that's required, but we will also focus a little bit on the device. I thought I will throw some more statistics before we jumped into the unified endpoint management as one of the core component of your zero trust architecture design. So what we have seen is we have seen number of statistics in terms of how an organization has seen almost 45% reduction of a likelihood of the data breach when they are designing their zero trust architecture in a correct manner. We've also seen the 75% reduction of a password reset request, because now you have enabled a self-service password reset as a part of your a zero trust network architecture. We've also seen a high increase in IT efficiency, almost up to 50% reduction in an overall the management effort, especially, and 80% reduction in the deployment time when you're deploying the new devices, or could be variety of devices, right? So if you build the correct zero trust foundation, it definitely helps you with a number of ways. One thing is it will accelerate your journey. If you are trying to move your resources infrastructure from on-prem to the cloud, that really helps you. It also helps you in securing the hybrid workforce people working from office, working from home, or at different locations as well, who are trying to access your critical resources. We also see the how your employees are being transformed and the experience they have, because you are now no longer you are no longer allowing them to download any kind of a risky application on that particular device, and you're also helping them in more customizing their access based on the type of user they are. Could be a frontline user, could be a information worker, could be a privileged users as well, right? Uh, Microsoft also did one kind of a survey in terms of what is the current adoption of a zero trust, and why employees organizations are looking at zero trust as one of the architecture design. So just to zoom in, if you look at it, hybrid workforce is kind of a main intent there, where 31% of the organizations are focusing on that, and we are seeing more and more employers are focusing in that space as well. And the top motivator, what we have seen, is to overall improving the security posture. They want to improve the end user experience and productivity. 44% of them are motivated for implementing zero trust for improving the experience of their end user, and increasing the productivity. Of course, there are many other motivations, such as they want to simplify their security stake so they can consolidate all the point solutions into by going into a best of platform model rather than going the best of breed model. And in turn, it also helps them in reducing the cost as well. Uh, some more statistics. Since I'm based in Australia and New Zealand, I'm highlighting one particular on that. If you look at 28% of the organizations in Australia have already fully implemented zero trust architecture model, and the 43% are already in progress. As compared to what US, what you see, 44% has fully implemented, and 35% are percentage is in progress. And if you look at the bottom part of the screen, where you will see it in terms of increase security and compliance agility, these are some of the benefits of zero trust implementation, zero trust network architecture implementation. They've increased the speed of threat detections and remediations, and of course they're protecting the data much a better way in that particular case. Okay, now let's dive a little bit into the how your endpoint or device management comes into play. So I'll just run through the whole slide so you can see it on a better full screen. Let me go one step back. The first one being, when it comes to the modern management, the device has to be registered and managed from the cloud. That should be one of the core priority when you're implementing a unified endpoint management solutions or a device management solution. That's the number one priority for that. Second, you must have that particular solution. For example, Microsoft Endpoint Manager can really help you with securing or pushing through the secure configuration based on your group policy. You analyze those kind of policies and making sure that the devices are hardened according to that. The third one being the conditional access. The previous slide which I talked about, the zero trust network architecture policy engine, that's where the conditional access comes into play. In this particular example is Azure AD conditional access, which can allow you to direct your access based on the policy you have defined in your conditional access policy engine. If the device is secure and it is hardened and its policies are met, then only you can access my resources. Could be data, could be network, could be on-premise application, or could be SaaS-based application. So that's my conditional access thing you need as a part of your zero trust consideration. Device risk, same thing as a part of it. If the device has a risk or a malware or a threat, then you want to deny the access for that particular device. Data loss prevention as well is one of the key criteria when you are thinking of a solution as a unified endpoint management. How are you going to manage the data leakage from that particular device? Could be handheld device or could be a laptop as such. And patching and update, that's also a key requirement in terms of how you are going to make sure that the devices are patched and updated according to the company policy. Okay. This another example of a unified endpoint management. Windows Server on-premise client, which could be a tenant towards your tenant. Second one could be a co-manage along with your Windows 10, including configuration management and your MDM solution. And the third part is the native cloud management, completely managed through the cloud, which in this case you can use a Microsoft Intune or any kind of other MDM or MAM solutions, which can work really close hand on hand along with your unified endpoint management solution. Okay. And the main part we touched upon is how we are going to manage the whole compliance part of your device. So are they meeting your security policy in terms of all the controls are in place, or are they meeting or you're realizing any kind of a threat which is in their case. And to showcase that, I will show you a quick click through demonstration to see how a device management or a unified endpoint management works hand in hand as a part of your zero trust network architecture. So let's dive into a quick demonstration to get the messaging very clear in terms of what do I mean by implementing a zero trust network architecture along with a unified device management solution. Okay. So let's make it real. So let's take a hypothetical scenario in this case. I'm going to zoom it a little bit so you can see it a better way. In this particular case, I'm not going to run through all 10 or 12 use cases, but let's look at from a use case point of view. A hacker has stolen the credential. He's trying to log in on the company resources. An employee need to access the on-premise line of business application while he's away from his desk, could be working from home. And he's trying to download a corporate data from a SaaS application onto a personal device. The device is not managed by the company. It is an unmanaged device or BYO device as such. And user is trying to share the document with an external partner, which they may have access, may not have access to that, but DLP kind of a scenario. An employee is also trying to request resources outside their business group. So out of this 5 scenario, we'll look at 3 or 4 based on how much time do I have on that. Okay, let's go for the first one. In this particular case, we will look at an employee requires a device which has to be managed and has to be compliant according to the company policy. Okay, so that's our first instance. So in this particular case, for the demonstration purpose, we'll go to one of the Google app as such. So it's a corporate app managed by the company. So they go and trying to log in on that particular, trying to access that application using their username and password. Username is entered, password is entered, and it will say that we have sent you a notification for second factor authentication. Once you have entered the second factor authentication, it will say that the device is not secured or not being managed. You have to enroll that particular device through your unified endpoint management solutions or with a combination of MDM or MAM solution. Once you enroll, only then you get access to that particular company resources. So that was the first use case what I wanted to show you. Second use case is we want to limit and audit these sessions access from a non-managed device, and specifically we want to apply some DLP policy. The first use case which I talked about, how are you going to prevent the company's sensitive data on particular device which is BYO or which is not managed by the company. So we'll look at the similar scenario. User is trying to access the resource. Username is email or username is entered. Password is entered, and After the password is entered, they are now approved. Second factor authentication is approved, and it prompts you a message that access to this particular application has been monitored, because that device which the employee is using is not a managed device, and that particular employee is trying to download a sensitive file. Let me see if I can use my pen to highlight. Yep, I can show you with the pen as well. So that's a sensitive file. He or she can work online on that particular file, but as soon as he or she can tries to download that particular file on an unmanaged device, the download is blocked. That's something you can build it as a part of your zero trust architecture, as a part of your zero trust policy, using endpoint management solution or a unified endpoint management solution as a DLP part of it. And that can be monitored in the combination of cloud application security broker. You can monitor that as well. Okay. Third one we want to see the use case is how are you going to govern the data which is on an unmanaged device on a managed app. Did you get that? On a managed app. So you're given a mobile phone, or employee has a mobile phone, and it's a personal device. Employee doesn't want that device to be managed by the company, but he wants to access, or she wants to access, the email from the company. And for that reason, there is an Outlook app. The employee is trying to configure an Outlook app. They use it username, they enter the password. A request has been sent for the second factor authentication type, and now it has been prompted that the organization wants to protect that particular data within the app. Now, as a company, as a CIO, as a CISO, or an administrator, you cannot control the device because it's a personal device, but you want to make sure that the application and particular data within that applications are managed. So this is the combination of two things: mobile device management, mobile application management. They both are part of your unified endpoint management solution, right? So you enforce them to have a pin on that particular application. Once the pin is been entered, the application is secured with the pin, but not the phone. Phone, you don't manage it. Now they have access to that particular application, and they can access the email. Now they can open the email, they can read through the email. Email has a sensitive file. In this particular case, let me zoom it so you can have a better view. Now in this particular file, the email has a sensitive particular document. The employee is trying to move that particular file from company managed app to a personal cloud storage. As soon as they try to do it, it says company policy does not allow them to store that particular file on an unapproved cloud storage. Now the employee is trying to copy the particular text from the file which he or she has opened it in the Outlook app and try to paste it in a WhatsApp or a Facebook or a Twitter or any other location, any other app. As soon as they try to do it, they paste it, it will say that your organization cannot allow you to paste that kind of. So it's a combination of a DLP, it's a combination of mobile device management and an application management as well. Okay. Next scenario, we'll look at it in terms of how you can deny access to an application when the device is out of compliant, or it's a jailbroken or a rooted. So very quickly, you have a phone, you jailbroke it, and of course it is now in a risky mode. You're trying to access your company application. As soon as you try to do it, it says device is uncompliant, not compliant according to the company policy. It's a jailbroken device. So again, as a part of your unified endpoint management policy or a solution or a strategy, you have to build this kind of a use case if you're thinking of moving into a zero trust network architecture. And that can be monitored as a part of your, it depends what solutions you're using. You can monitor those signals or threats from the dashboard point of view, right? Last but not the least, let's look at in terms of I want to deny an access towards any company application if device is not compliant. Not compliant could be, let me show you an example. So I have a Windows 10 device. Let me zoom it so you can have a better view. I have a Windows 10 device, and my company enforces that the desktop should always have a firewall on. If I try to disable the Windows firewall on that particular device and try to access my company resource, it will prompt that you cannot access to my resources because the device is gone out of security compliance requirement. Again, as a part of your strategy, you have to build this kind of a use case as well. In another scenario, if your device has gone or have a ransomware and the data is encrypted, again, if you try to access the resources, it will say, sorry, you can't access any of the resources from the device because device is a risky device. It has a threat of a malware or a ransomware in that particular case, right? You can monitor that in your any solution what you're using. So to summarize, in terms of now, hope you get an idea how unified endpoint strategy or a solution can work. Is a key component for your zero trust network architecture. As I talked about, you need to have the identity and device as a good two key criteria for collecting all the signals. Using your conditional access or a policy enforcement engine, then you disallow the access to any of the resources you may have it, right? To take home, what are you taking home out of this? If you have a plan, so understand what zero trust network architecture is, and briefly I explained to you. Focus on the three key principles of zero trust: always never trust, always verify, least privilege, and assume breach scenario. And then focus on identity and device security first. From the identity side, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, all those areas will come into play. From the device side, using a unified endpoint management strategy and a solution, you need to make sure that some of the use cases which I have gone through today, in terms of how are you going to manage the access towards your resources from an unmanaged device, or the risky device, or the DLP part. All those things has to be considered as a part of your overall strategy. So focus on identity and endpoint security. Focus on securing the hybrid workforce, and give your employee a better experience on how are they going to work remotely using this zero trust network architecture. So with that, open for any question. Feel free to reach out to me if if you want to ask any questions. Be in touch with me. That's my Twitter handle AS Kudrati. Or if you'd like to have a copy of this particular slide, I will upload the copy on this particular portal. It's my GitHub portal, aka.ms/Abbas. Go to this portal and look for the conference PPT folder. I have heaps of other zero trust PPT PDF format files, as well as many of my other conference presentation as well, which you can download and review it as and when the time permits. With that, thanks for your attention. Thank you for your attention and your time. Hope you learned something today. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and stay safe. Thank you.